Hello everyone, welcome to the third episode of Marketing Data Modeling Paradox. And today I want to talk about how marketing roles tenure relates to the timing of when people put in place a marketing measurement framework. And there's some interesting research and observations that I will share. But first, I want to start with this stark observation of mine. See it on LinkedIn every time I go on there. And it's the fact that marketing tenure across all roles is dropping. Why? So it doesn't matter whether we're talking about demand gen roles, historically with the lowest tenure, we're talking about marketing operations roles, where tenure historically has been longer, or anything in between on the marketing spectrum. It seems that there is less appreciation that people feel for the work that they do and business valuing their impact. Why? The conversations on LinkedIn are constantly telling marketers that they're going to be something that they're not today, maybe engineers, maybe data scientists, whatever it is, driven by all of the advents of AI. Why? Why can marketers be marketers, right, and do what they were hired to do? Then we have this continuous struggle of brand versus demand and this historical and very habitual lack of trust in what marketing is doing, right? Why? And then you have all the stats from Gartner that tell you about only 1 in 3 marketing leaders actually communicate the impact that marketing has on the business on a regular basis, and regular is the key word here. Another disturbing fact is that only 17%, I think it's a last year's stat, of marketing leaders trust their ability to measure impact of marketing on the business, right? Also problematic. And then you have the other side of it where at one point over the last year and a half, Gartner published a metric where less than half of all CEOs even trust what their marketing leader is doing. But that paints you a picture. That's why the marketing tenure is dropping and people move from role to role. And then, I wanted to understand why, because clearly it's important for my career as well and to share with all of you. Working for a MarTech company, I have this unique advantage that I did not have in my previous roles where I get to sit on a lot of marketing conversations. So I get to see what my peers are doing that's successful and things that, do not come out to be as they were planned. I see how their homework gets graded, and I actually have a valuable perspective to share based on that. So my counterpart in sales, Jean, and I did this exercise where we went through over 200 conversations that our sales team has had with marketing leaders over the last several months. And, thank goodness AI can do amazing processing of unstructured data and all the video conversations. And we have noticed a trend that separates marketers that have been very successful in their role and enjoy longer tenure versus those who feel like they have to prove their success, and sometimes they exit the business before the sales cycle for a specific deal. Somebody evaluating caliber mind, providing this measurement framework is even complete, right? So we wanted to understand what is the difference between these two marketing leaders and why some of them are more successful and enjoy longer tenure versus others who do not. So before I get into the details and the big aha moment, I want to ask you a question. When you started in your role, what was the first initiative that you undertook? Maybe for some of you, you thought about putting a measurement framework in place that would align to the North Star of the business, which is always the revenue number, never anything else. And then you decided, if this is my framework and these are my benchmarks, these are the things that I will do, and this is how I will measure them. That's option number 1. Option number 2, maybe you started with some exciting campaigns. Maybe you looked at the website and decided, man, this thing is overhauled before I do anything. Maybe you decided with a messaging framework to articulate the value prop for the business, and that was the first order of business. Maybe on the operations side, you started with Marketo cleanup or lead to account matching, or maybe deduping because the database was just a mess. Which one of these two camps do you fall in? So here are the two learnings that Jean and I have extracted from analysis of these hundreds of conversations that our team has had with marketing leaders, comparing the two camps. Leaders who sit down early and ask, how will I prove what worked? And how will I benchmark everything that I did against revenue? Before they launch a single campaign, they start early on, they form a hypothesis, they sell a framework to the business and get an okay and the buy-in and an alignment on it, right? they tend to stay in their roles longer, meaningfully longer, and they enjoy a more successful career and appreciation from the business. The leaders who start with the execution stuff, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, marketing is the most dynamic function within the business. You have to start something that creates excitement and generate energy. Maybe it's, rebrand, and it's absolutely the right call for your business. But if they put that measurement conversation or thinking of a measurement framework on a back burner, they tend to exit their organizations much sooner. And the common thinking amongst this group is to themselves that I will figure out the reporting later. I'll just start all of these campaigns, and once everything is running, then I will think about a measurement framework and the tooling that's required to do. So by saying that, I want to be careful though, because this is not a conversation about people who just didn't do their job right. By no means it's not that. It's actually quite the opposite. The leaders who move fast, ship a lot, get a lot of genuinely good stuff done for their business. They generate a lot of excitement, finally get to the point, sometimes it's at the end of 6 months, most likely it's at the end of 12 months, the end of their first year, where other business leaders, senior business leaders at the GTM table would ask them, and they would say, wow, you did so much great stuff. I hear people talk about us. This campaign that you launched sounds like it was a hit. There's a lot of excitement around the product and our brand. Can you show us anything on paper, any numbers that would help us understand how all of that influenced revenue or the impact that they had, right? And this question comes from a good place where they just want to translate success into numbers, because that's how businesses measure success. That's how investors measure business successes as well. But if there's no framework sitting underneath all of this activity that you did, and you're really not prepared to answer that conversation on the fly, you're in a difficult situation. And even if the work mattered, nobody built the yardstick. Nobody built that measurement. Nobody trained the business what to expect. And nobody had that continuous conversation, that regular conversation of this is how we're moving towards our goal throughout that year, right? Or 6 months or whatever. So nobody kind of fostered building confidence within the business. And you're on the defensive when that conversation comes and when the question comes, but you're not prepared to answer it right away. So overall, what we learned from this exercise, while the sales got the answer that they needed to understand like what is happening with some of their deals where the champion leaves before the deal is over, and that's a short period of time, but people start this desire to put a framework in place and measure and track things when it's already too late. Clearly, the question has been asked. So when we step back and look at the why, the same theme keeps showing up. It's the leaders who come to measurement late, usually under pressure when the questions are being asked. They have a lower success rate of making it to the other side of the same evaluation. So, of course, the urgency gets people searching for a solution similar to Calibramind, right? And it's always the same pressure that ends their tenure before that solution is in place, before they get a chance to even answer that question. And the question of trust and building that trust is a very sensitive one, because if you are on borrowed time your first 12 months executing things with everybody sitting in attention waiting for the results, and the time comes but you're not prepared to show those results in numeric accurate ways that translate to revenue, it's a different conversation that you have to have at that point. At that point, you have to search for a rescue, something that would help you, answer things when the question's been asked versus preparing for that early. So if I look at the previous episodes of Marketing Data Modeling Paradox, the first one, when we talked about the different frameworks for measurement, whether it's marketing mix modeling or attribution or incrementality that comes to mind, and this marketing trifecta of employing all three to some extent, it's the same principle that kind of works here when it comes to tenure. Only here we have to think about the person at the center of it all. If you skip the framework early on, because it's harder, getting the business alignment takes a minute. Explaining things to people is more difficult and more challenging. Sometimes you just don't have a crystal ball to wrap your mind around how all of the stuff that you will do will pan out, right? And you go for the exciting stuff where you start doing things, hands on the keyboard, you're executing, whether it's conferences, rebrand, website overhaul, database cleanup, what have you, or changing MarTech stack, right? Usually you end up at the point where you miss the window of opportunity to set expectations for the business, waiting for marketing success. The harder path would be to build that model up front. But I always say that slow is smooth and smooth is fast, right? So while it's hard maybe early on because, again, you don't have a crystal ball to understand what those questions might be, but putting something in place, a framework, a measurement, whether you get a tool or you just do something within the resources of what you have, but articulating that to the business, how you will measure your success, actually gets you in a better position early on. It costs more upfront, yes, time, effort, resources, all of that, but it will hold up under the scrutiny. So on month 12, month 24, whatever that might be, when the questions are asked, you can produce the results and answers instantaneously. That puts you in a better position and a better light as a marketing leader, makes you appear extremely informed with your finger on the pulse of the organization and extremely valuable because you are revenue accountable. And that's an important place to be. So statisticians, a little fun fact at the end, statisticians call it the hazard rate problem, right? So where the risk of the marketing tenure is unevenly spread throughout the months. And it's not really high up front because, like I said, you're on borrowed time and on borrowed trust the first 12 months. And then it skyrockets at the end where you have to articulate the result and kind of show numbers behind the successes that you called successes in all hands, right? So that risk is accumulated at the end. But the leaders who hedged for this risk early and put a measurement framework in place and articulated how they will evaluate all of these different tactical things, what metrics they will use, what systems will provide those metrics for them, how they will articulate that laddering to the North Star. By the way, we have materials on that as well in the resources section of our website, how to create a framework for marketing measurement with a tool or do-it-yourself style. Those are the leaders that did not have a really high hazard rate and risk accumulation at the end. So if you're stepping into a marketing role, whether it's demand gen, whether it's operations, whether it's revenue and growth, or anything in between, here's one thing that I would highly recommend you do early on. Just write down a one-pager, right? And write it on a napkin. How will you know what worked? Think about it early on. Present your hypotheses to the business. Say, this is what I'm expecting at the end. Explain how you will measure your expectations as the time progresses. See if anybody has any objections, and then go ahead and execute. You will quickly understand that, there's a lot of data to deal with. You might actually go and find a tool or platform similar to Calibrmine, or maybe you will have access to your data science team who will build you something in-house that will help you get there. But it's really important to do it early because your career depends on it.